You're sleeping skin to skin with people. It's that hot in there. Your skin feels like it's melting into each other. But in that moment of having this clarity that I'd never have had before, I was like, you know what? I'm done.
I solemnly swear that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me.
Hi everybody, Ron here from The Truth About Addiction. Today's guest is Holly Deane-Johns. I still said Jones again. And look, I'm really excited to have Holly on. I know a little bit about Holly's story, but we're all going to know a lot more. Thanks, Holly. Thanks for joining us, Darling.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, mate. It's great.
So what's your story, mate? Your life's been pretty colourful?
Yeah, okay. So I'll start at my childhood. I consider myself to have had a pretty normal childhood up until probably about the age of 11 or 12. My parents used to have a real estate agency when I was younger. I can't remember why it closed, but when it did, I remember my mother getting into having escort agencies, which were run out of the family home. She had 3 different phone lines. So these phones would be ringing pretty much from 6 o'clock in the evening till 4 or 5 the next morning. So yeah, it was all done from the family home. I didn't really want to have friends over after school because it would be very strange. Why have you got 3 phones? Why is it ringing all the time? Why is there women walking in and out of your house? They would drop money off to my mum. So when I did have friends over, I'd explain it away as my parents own a import-export agency, which is why the phones ring all night, different time zones, etc. Yeah, so my father was a very heavy drinker and he'd get very violent towards my mother. So all of us kids, there's 5 of us, there's 3 boys and one girl. So we'd very often, hear mum and dad behind closed doors with him bashing mum and her crying and all that sort of shit. Yeah, really hard to deal with that type of thing. Like we loved our dad. He was a great guy and mum was a great woman. It was just hard to deal with as a kid, knowing that. But that became our norm, never-ending cycle of abuse. It came to a point where after a couple of years, they just decided to call it quits. My dad decided to move back to Melbourne. My mother said us kids could have the choice of who we wanted to go with. We all chose mum. The reason I chose mum was because dad was very strict. Mum wasn't. We could get away with murder with mum. So as a teenager, I didn't want discipline. I just wanted to live my best life. So staying with mum was the right choice for me, so I thought at the time. Yeah, so after the separation, my mum ended up meeting a guy. I think I was about 14 at that stage. We didn't know at the time. We found out later that he was a heroin addict, had been in and out of jail for heroin-related crimes. My family had never known anyone who used drugs. We'd never seen drugs. Like, that was just totally not in our life until it was a few months later. Yeah, we found out what this guy was all about. My mother then started snorting heroin as well, became addicted. And then subsequently, every single one of us kids became heroin addicts and we all ended up in prison because of our addictions. I first tried heroin when I was 15, 16. I'd been asking mum a lot, can I just try it? Can I have a snort? And she'd say no. And I just kept asking. And then one night she said yes. So I had a snort, absolutely loved it. And as far as my mother knew, that was the only time I used. I kept using, but nobody knew. Yeah, I was a heroin addict, a functioning heroin addict. I was still eating. I was still doing things I needed to do in daily life. So yeah, I kept that hidden for about a year and a half that I was using. I want to make this clear as well. A lot of the podcasts I've done and TV and everything, a lot of comments I see is, your mum's shit. How could she do that to her daughter? Well, this is the thing. We were new to this world. And if my mother had have known what what that would have done to me, what the consequences of that one snort would have been. There's no way in the world she ever would have said yes. There's just no way. My mother wasn't that type of a mother. But having said that, I do know that that's bad as well. You know, your mum saying, yes, have a snort. But I just like to make that clear, you know, because I don't feel it's fair for people to judge that on my mother, you know. But yeah, you know, I'm realistic. I know people have judgments and everything, and that's fine. Think what you like, but I do like to make that clear. Yeah, so when I was 20, I was arrested by the feds for conspiracy to import heroin. Two of mine and my boyfriend's so-called friends wanted to do a run from Thailand to Australia. They didn't know anyone to buy heroin from in Thailand, and we did. So they asked us if we could get the heroin for them, give it to them, and they'd bring it back. And because they didn't know anyone to sell big amounts to, they asked us, could we sell it for them? We said, yeah, no worries. Now, this was purely a favour. We were not making 1 cent off this deal. It was a friend doing a favour for a friend. My bloke went to Thailand, bought the gear, gave it to them. They both had 5 ounces each in their body. They came back, rang me up and said, yeah, all good, we're at the hotel. I said, cool, I'll come over and pick up the gear. So I went over there, was in the hotel room talking to them. Little did I know there was a cop in the cupboard with a recording device, recording everything. I've walked out of the hotel room with the gear, gone to get in the lift, and all these cops have run out at me. So, yeah, I didn't know until a few days later that they'd given me up for something that wasn't even my deal. But anyway, you know, I did what I did. I was guilty of doing what I did. So, yeah. So they gave me up to get a reduced sentence. So I ended up doing more time than they did. Yeah. So I got a sentence at that time of 18 and a half years to serve 5 before being eligible for parole. I did the 5 years, got out and did 6 months of work release. Once that was finished, I then flew to Thailand to be with my boyfriend. When I got arrested, I sent a message to him not to come back here because my lawyer had advised me that, well, you've just got 5 years, he'll get 15. So, yeah, I said, don't come back. It's not worth it, you know. So, yeah, went over to be with him, living our best life. We were both heroin addicts, so we were in the best place to be if you're a heroin addict. So at that time, there were a couple of guys living over there who were also on the run from Australia. My husband knew both these people and had a friendship with them because, you know, commonalities, both on the run, blah, blah, blah. I had a guy that would make false passports, driver's licenses, all that type of thing. So I asked him to make a calendar for me and insert 15 grams of heroin into this calendar. Once this was done, I would send this calendar back to Australia and address it to myself. I was doing this so when I came back to Australia, I'd have gear to use. I wouldn't have to go and buy it on the street. So yeah, I'd done that a couple of times, and one of these guys knew about it. So he ended up doing a run from Thailand to, was it Alice Springs? Northern Territory. And he got busted. He had a kilo on him. And he said to the cops, I'll give you a chick in Thailand. She's sending calendars back with heroin in it. So, yeah, unfortunately, he knew what I was doing, gave me to the cops. Then I was put under surveillance by the Thai police and the Australian police. One night, my friend had come to pick me up to take me to the post office so I could post one of these calendars. I've gone in, posted it, picked up a letter from my father. I didn't read it. I put it in the glove box to read later. I jumped back in the car, said to my friend, are you hungry? He said, yeah. I said, all right, let's go and get something to eat. Where we went to stop, there was no parking spots. It was so busy. So I said, look, I'll get out and get the food. You just keep chucking laps around the block. So I've gone, got the food, come back. He stopped the car, I've opened the door, got in. As I'm about to grab the door to close it, all these blokes have run at the car. So I'm playing tug of war with the door. I thought we were being robbed. I didn't know they were cops, because you hear of foreigners getting robbed all the time. So I'm tugging with this door, and I'm telling my mate, floor it, get the fuck out of here. But there was nowhere to go. We couldn't get out. We were trapped. So, yeah, we were both arrested, put in separate cars. As we're driving back, or as we're driving, the cops said, "Oh, have you been to a post office tonight?" I said, "No." So they drove me back there, got the guy to identify me. They brought my mate in as well. He was freaking out, but he'd actually been in jail in Thailand before, so he knew the go. I said, "Don't worry." I said, "Mate, you're not going to get arrested." I said, "You didn't come in with me. I was the one that posted the calendar. Mate, you just drove me." And he said, "No, it doesn't work like that here." He said, "I'm fucked too." So, yeah, he was taken back to his apartment. I was taken back to mine. On the way to the apartment, the two cops were saying, "What's your address?" I said, "I don't have an address." I said, "I'm like a gypsy. I stay with this friend for a few days, then I'll go and stay with somebody else." They were telling me bullshit. "Where do you live?" I'm just saying that same thing over and over again. Then I realised we're driving back to my apartment. They knew where I lived all along. So we've pulled up. They've taken me upstairs. There was a few cops in the apartment at this stage. While they're searching my apartment, I was lucky enough to be able to get a bag of jewellery I had out of the bedside drawer, and I put that down the front of my jeans, because I knew as soon as I found that that'd be gone. So, yeah, luckily I got that. Still had my bag and that on me, which I was really surprised about. I was expecting a woman cop to walk in at any time to search me. That never happened. So, yeah, as the cops were searching, I had another calendar in one of my drawers. So I was freaking out about that now. Plus, I had another ounce of heroin in a stereo speaker. That morning, I'd got the gear out of the speaker to have a shot before I went out. Well, one of the screws on the back was loose, and I thought, I'll fix it tonight when I get home. So now I was freaking out about that, because the back of the speaker was now loose because of that one screw. So one of the cops searched the drawer that I had the other calendar in. He totally missed it. So I was like, oh, thank fuck for that. After that, another cop came to that same drawer and started to search it. And I said, your mate's just searched that. But he just kept searching it. Then he's grabbed the calendar and gone, what's this? So he found that. They picked up the stereo, had a bit of a look, put it back down, and I was like, thank God. So that was safe. They had brought pickup trucks to the apartment complex. So all the cops came in. Every single thing I owned was loaded onto these pickup trucks. And I thought, oh, well, I'll never see that again. They'll just take it. So, I was then taken, we were both taken to the Narcotics Suppression Bureau, which we stayed there for about 2 hours, and then we were taken to the lockup. At my mate's place, they found some methadone in the fridge, a gun, and I think it was 110 grams of heroin. So we're both taken to the lockup, put in the cells, and we both knew, fuck, we're going to be so sick. So, yeah, we had that to look forward to, as well as being locked up. So, yeah, after a couple of days, I said to Bob, I said, look, when the right cops are on, I said, I'll ask if we can go into the room where all our stuff is and get a change of clothes and some toiletries. I said, you distract the copper, I'll get to the speaker and get the gear out. So that was our plan. When the right cops were on, yeah, we need a change of clothes, toiletries. Can you take us to get some? Yeah, cool. We've gone into this room. Everything was there except the stereo speaker. I was like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. I couldn't believe it, Could not believe it. So we were saying to the cops, look, we need, someone to come here. Like, we need medication. Like, we're fucked. And they just laughed, well, if you want to use heroin, this is what happens. So when the embassy came, we said, look, can you get a doctor to come down here? Like, we need medication. They said, yeah, no problem. So a doctor came and bought medication, which the cops had to give us throughout the day. One night there was a cop on who had the methadone, and he said to Bob, "You want to buy this back?" So Bob's yelled out to me from the next cell. He said, "They want to sell it back. Do you want to buy it?" And I said, "Fucking oath." I said, "Of course." So we bought that back, and I just said to him, "Look, just sip it." I said, "I know, probably want to get, stoned and that." I said, "But don't." I said, "Just sip it, And that's what we did. There was another guy in the next cell who'd been busted, and he had a lot of hash still on him. And he'd give me hash when there were no cops there. We'd go over the bars and get it like that. So, yeah, I was sipping my methadone, had hash, the medication. Most people were kept there, I was told, for 2 weeks, and then they were taken to the main prison. For some reason, we were kept there for a month. I kept asking, when are we going to be transferred? Like, everyone's gone. Why are we still here? And we were told, don't be in so much of a hurry to go, because once you're there, you'll wish you were back here. But I just wanted to leave there because I knew, even though you're going to the prison, you're going to have more freedom than this, sitting in a cage 24 hours a day. So, yeah, we were taken to court every 12 days. That's how they do it over there. The first time we went, we were so sick. Like, I was sitting there dry reaching, and I was just fucked. After that first appearance, we were told to sign papers, and I said, "No, I'm not signing anything." And they're like, "You sign the papers." And I said, "I'm not signing anything." I said, "That could say anything. I don't know what I'm signing. It's all in Thai. Are you fucking for real?" So, yeah, that didn't go down too well, but who cares? Yeah, we were taken to jail. He was taken one way, I was taken to another. As we were about to descend into the cells at the court, my mate said, "Look, don't spin out when you go down there. Like, it'll be nothing like you've ever seen before." And I said, "Fuck off, mate." I said, "I'll be right. Like, it's cool." Little did I know I would spin out, and it was like nothing I'd ever known before. Yeah. So we'll both walk down this really steep staircase. As you're going lower, it's becoming darker and darker. I was searched before I went in there. I had money in my pocket. She pulled that out. I fucking took it straight back out of her hand, put it back in my pocket. Walked into the cell. She shut the door, and I was like, "What is this?" It was just a concrete block. It had like a toilet in the ground. Yeah. There was another small area that had a tap. That was it. The room was filled with that many women. You couldn't sit down. Everyone in there was standing. Blew my mind. You couldn't even see the floor. I was looking around for foreign faces. I didn't see any. One Chinese chick walked over to me and said, "Hi, I'm Iris." Yeah, introduced herself. She was Chinese, but she'd been there for a while at this time. She spoke brilliant Thai. So that was handy. She sort of told me what to expect, what it was like at the prison, all that type of thing. So, yeah, it was fortunate for me to actually have somebody that I could talk to straight away. Otherwise, I'd be, there for the whole day, not talking to anybody. So from there, we were taken to the main prison. You get picked up at the court at 6 o'clock, a massive bus with armed guards standing at the entrance of the bus. Get taken to the main prison. You're then taken through to an open yard. There's a screw there. She'll go through all your stuff. Then we were taken to the hospital section where we were to get searched internally. Now, you would know this from being in jail. Other women would know this if they've been in jail. You get searched internally by a nurse. So that's what I was expecting to happen. But it wasn't a nurse. It was another prisoner who was doing the internal searches. I could not believe it. I was like, you got to be kidding. But that's how they did it there. So there was a massive line of women. I can't even remember how long, but there was a lot of people waiting there that night. So when it's my turn and I've gone into the room, I've looked into the bin because I know how many women have just been before me. I've looked into that bin. There weren't many gloves in there. So I'm like, no way. She's using the same gloves on every person. So I can't communicate, but I've motioned to her, get your gloves off, put them in the bin and put new ones on. She did. So yeah, that was my introduction to Thai prison life. Yeah, from there, taken to meet, it's called the Mayban. That's called the mother of the house. So she's in charge of sort of everything that happens in that section. You're given a uniform, but it's the heaviest material you could ever get. So, of course, as soon as you put this on, you're sweating profusely. I guess that's done for a reason, because then they bring out these other uniforms that are paper thin, are breathable. They bring out pajamas, very thin material. Do you want to buy these? Well, of course I do. So I buy uniforms, I buy pajamas. I was then taken up to the first floor, where I was standing outside the cell. This was just a very long corridor. The concrete was about waist high, and from there it was just bars up to the ceiling. So if you were in one cell and looked down the corridor, you could see into every single cell. So I'm standing there, the door gets opened, I get pushed in, see you later. I'm standing there looking at this cell. There was like 120 people in it, all sitting down. You couldn't see the floor. I was just like, wow, what is going on here? I'm looking around again, looking for a foreigner. There's nobody. It's just all Thai people. I said, does anyone here speak English? Yeah, I do, one chick says. And I'm like, oh, thank God for that. She was Thai, but she'd lived in Paris before, very good English. So she was actually the boss of that room. So I sat down with her. She told me sort of what the go was, what to expect. She said, okay, I will allocate you a sleeping space. And I said, what do you mean? I said, there's no space. You can't even see the floor. And she said, don't worry, I'll find you somewhere. So she's walked down every line to count how many people are in each line. The line that had the least, she was going to put me in. So she told everybody, get onto your sides, which everyone did. Move, move, move. There was a spot that was about 22 centimetres. She said, that's your spot. I said, are you kidding me? She's like, nah, that's where you're going to be sleeping. I was like, okay. I've laid down with everybody else, and that was my sleeping spot for the next three years, I think I was there. So you're sleeping skin to skin with people. It's that hot in there, your skin feels like it's melting into each other. You're that close. The chick I was sleeping next to had her hair in a ponytail. So that ponytail was right in my face. So I'm pushing her head, like, get out of my face. She's getting pissed off at me, which understandably, I'm pushing someone in the head. But it's like, get your hair out of my face. I can't speak Thai. She's not understanding what I'm saying. But we're both very agitated. So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, lay down, try and sleep the best you can. If somebody in that line turns over, the whole line turns over. It was insane. So, yeah, I had to pretty quickly get my head around all this crazy new stuff I was learning and having to now live like. The showering the next morning was next level insanity. The door gets unlocked. At the same time, you just hear clang, 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 just all through the jail. Then you hear what I describe as a stampede. It sounds like bulls running. This is because everybody's running as fast as they can to get down to what I describe as a massive trough situation. Now, you got to remember, you're going to one trough, which is going to shower 2,000 people.
Yeah.
Right? There's a trustee at one end of the trough. She's the one that'll start the countdown. Once she starts the countdown, so you've got a tiny plastic bowl, you dip your water in, you throw it over yourself. That's how you shower. I'm looking into this water. I'm seeing pubic hair. I'm seeing nits. I'm seeing stones. And I'm like, what? What? I've put my bowl in. The first scoop has got all this stuff in it. I throw it out. Picked up again. And I'm like, I can't do this. I've just got to shower. Now, I made the mistake that day of not taking my top off. I didn't know. So while you're at the front of the tank, you've got women behind you grabbing onto your shirt, pulling you away from the front so they can get in. It's crazy. You're actually fighting for water. So once I knew this is really how it worked, I started showering without a pajama top on or a bra. You could only be naked from the waist up. So that's what I did. I was advised to take off my knickers in the cell so that when I came down, I could shower more easily. And that's what I did. If the trustee was an asshole, she would do a really, really quick count. If it was someone decent, the count would be very slow. I quickly realised I needed to become friends with the people who worked in this area, who were the trustees. I became friends with all of them, and one of them I employed to do my clothes washing. So because I employed her, she had a certain area in the jail where this was her area to dry clothes. That was one of her perks of being a trustee. So I knew none of my stuff would ever get stolen. That was number one. That was huge because everyone's stuff got stolen. If I needed extra water to shower with, I could get it. So that's how I sort of started my time there. I aligned myself with people that I knew could help me, and they were getting something from me. They were getting money, but I was getting their help as well. So it was a mutual win-win. Yeah, so look, that was my introduction to the Thai prison system. I don't know if you want to ask me something at this stage or you just want me to keep going.
Yeah, the question that I always, and because I have friends who spend a long time in Thai prisons,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a lot of the people that listen to my podcast will be like, they won't be able to fathom what you're talking about.
Yeah,
But you know, I know for a fact that without money in Thailand, in prison, you don't eat.
yeah.
You
You
don't
don't eat.
sleep. You don't
Yeah,
lay down. You don't do anything. You know, I mean, like unless you can pay something to somebody,
yeah,
you get nothing. You know, and I had a mate spend 4 years without charge on remand, got
yeah.
charged, spent another 2 years fighting it, got found not guilty, and then they appealed against him and put him back. You know, he never got out of jail. He spent 7 years there to be found not guilty. 7 years he spent in a Thai prison to be found not guilty.
I
It's just,
slept next to a woman for many years as well. She'd been there for 7 years on a murder charge and got found not guilty and walked out, but still did 7 years.
yeah,
Insane.
yeah,
Insane.
yeah. No, it's a different world. The thing that I come to mind is, were you using during the 7 years that you were in Thai prison?
Yeah. As soon as I got into the prison and could get to a different section which held all the foreigners who had been sentenced, as soon as I got over there and started talking to other people, I said, "Who does gear here?"
Mm.
And I couldn't believe it when I was told there was only one person in the whole jail of 6,000 people that did any drugs. One person. Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
Mm.
So I got hooked up with her. Eventually, I was seeing her myself and not having to go through other people. Yeah, I was using heroin and buying antidepressants off an American woman in there. She was due to go back to America on a transfer treaty and wanted to make some money before she left. So I was buying her pills. At that time, I just wanted to be as stoned and numb as I could be. Yeah, it was so traumatic being in this place and just how different everything was. I just didn't want to know about it. So there was another woman that you sort of stay with people in little groups. That's who you eat with and blah, blah, blah. One of these women I was staying with was a Japanese woman who used to use heroin on the outside. And I said to her, look, I'm getting a bit of gear all the time. I said, I used to give her some if she wanted it. So, every so often she's like, yeah, I have a snort. So that was the two of us doing that. After 10 months of doing this, I'll give you an example because I think this is interesting for people who don't know what it's like. In a Thai prison, and this is hard for people to get their heads around, but you would already know this from the people that you know, there is not 1 second of any day that you're there that you have privacy. There's no privacy at all anywhere. So when I would have a snort, one of the ways I would do it was go into the toilet. My friend would stand in front of me. That's how I would do it. Then we'd change over. If I was in the cell, I would have to wait for everybody to be asleep, for the ceiling fan above me to rotate away from me so I could have a snort. And many times I was just about to do it and someone would wake up and want to go to the toilet. And I was like, you've got to be joking. So then I came up with an idea. They announced that we're starting to do meditation. And for the hardcore Buddhists, you can come up to the first floor of the cells in the afternoon, can meditate and pray. So I said to my mate, this is great news. We'll go up, say we're meditating, because all the hardcore Buddhists, mate, they close their eyes and don't open them for like a full hour. So I said, that's what we're doing. So we got in this line, one of the screws came and they were like, what are you doing here? I said, we're going up to meditate. Okay. So this is what we did. We'd go up there and that's how we'd snort.
Yeah.
Like that, I want to mention that because that's how extreme you've got to think. Like that's crazy.
Yeah.
But when you're an addict, that's how your mind is. You're thinking, how do I do this? How do I, that's the mind of an addict. So that was really interesting. I used full on for 10 months. And when you hear somebody say they had a light bulb moment, that's really what happened to me. I woke up one morning, 10 months into being there. I was sitting there on the filthy ground one morning and I was just sitting there looking around at my surroundings and the people. That switch came on and I was just like, fuck, what have you done to yourself? Look at where you are. Look where you are. You've ruined your life. You've ruined your family's life. You've ruined your friend's life. You're fucked. I knew at that time that I didn't know how long I would be there, but I knew it would be 20 or 30 years. I knew that. But in that moment of having this clarity that I'd never had before, I was like, you know what? I'm done. This is not going to be my life anymore. I'm done. And from that moment on, I've never looked back. I've never wanted to use drugs ever again. It's never been a thought in my mind. That moment for me, that was it. Yeah. Thankfully, I had that moment. Thank fuck.
Yeah, it's crazy how, what you said before, my whole life revolved around getting, using, and finding ways and means to get more.
Yeah.
It didn't matter how much I had, I knew I was going to run out.
Yeah.
It was never enough. Because to me, stoned was unconscious.
Yeah.
Especially in jail. The reason I asked you about did you use in jail, because I used to call using in jail remission. While I was stoned, I wasn't in jail.
Yeah.
I didn't give a fuck, I mean, it was like, who cares, I'm stoned, and I was caught in that trap for a long time. And my whole life was evolved around getting and using drugs. I'd get out of prison, I'd start using again. I'd get out of prison, I'd start using again. I'd promise myself this time's going to be different. And that's why it blows my mind that, you had that light bulb moment and you've stuck staunch to your belief. Because I say to people all the time, you can use drugs, but you can't use drugs and have a good life.
Yeah, look, you might think you are living a good life at the time. You got money, you're scoring all the time, you're not in trouble with the law. Everything's great until shit hits the fan. You know, even when I went to jail when I was 20, you know, I still used in jail. I was going down the back all the time, you know, but it's like, oh, who cares? You don't care. Have a bit of a holiday for 7 days, you know, at a time.
Yeah.
You don't care. That's just the life of an addict.
Yeah. You show a lot of courage, but, you know, like, and your mental capacity is really good for someone who spent 7 years. You spent 7 years over there
7.5, yeah.
in a Thai prison is equivalent to, you know, 20 years in Australian prison. I know people can't say that, but I've spent a long time in Australian prisons. You know, my last lagging was a quick one of 8 years.
Just a quickie.
Just a quickie, yeah, just a quick 8 at 50 years of age too, which is not good, and clean.
Yeah.
And I
Different,
stayed
yeah.
clean through the lagging. I stayed clean through the lagging because I'll never go back to being a junkie again.
Yeah.
I don't hate myself that much anymore.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I just
Good
don't
point.
I just don't like being a junkie. I didn't stop using it because I don't like drugs. I fucking loved heroin.
Yeah.
I escaped from prison for heroin. I've robbed banks for heroin. I've put guns in people's heads for heroin. You know what I mean? Like, don't tell me I didn't like it.
Yeah.
When I hear people say I hated drugs, I didn't hate them. I loved them.
Oh, I did too.
I hated the person I became when I used them, and
Yeah.
I hated the things I had to do to keep using them.
Exactly.
And then it's got to a stage with me now where I think about the collateral damage from being a drug dealer and a drug importer. And, you know, that's I suppose that comes later on in life when you start getting a bit of empathy, compassion for other people. And it's not a moral thing with me. I don't know what it is. I just don't want to harm people anymore, you know. It is harmful. I say using drugs is a form of self-abuse. It's like slashing up, but slashing up spiritually and emotionally.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, for sure.
it's a form of self-abuse. It really is horrible, and takes so much courage to say no.
Definitely.
Especially in a society that encourages it. I'll touch quickly on this. Your mum gave you a snort, right? And when she gave you the snort, she had no understanding of what she was doing. It's the same as when the dads are giving their kids a drink of wine or a sip of beer. It's the
Yeah.
same fucking thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. If people go, no, it's not. Well, yes, it is.
It is. It is exactly the same thing. Yeah.
When I started using, I never knew about addiction. I didn't even know you could get a habit.
Yeah.
I was shooting heroin
Exactly.
up, and then one day I didn't have a shot in the morning, and I started vomiting, and I thought I had food poisoning from the night before.
Yeah.
And
I
the
know,
bloke
it's
that was selling
insane.
dope for me came over and he started laughing. He said, "Oh, you ain't got food poisoning, you've just got a habit." And I'm like, "What?" And he mixed me up a shot, and I still remember this was 1974. I put it away, and I thought, never run out of fucking drugs again.
Yeah.
Never run out of heroin again. That felt terrible.
And it goes back to what you said before. Your whole mindset is just trained on getting gear. So when you wake up in the morning, you've got that shot. You're not
Yeah.
waking up sick.
Yeah. People
You
don't
know?
understand the power of addiction and active addiction, the power that heroin has over you. They've got no understanding. And even today, because the drugs have changed a lot, you know, they're using all that fuck. And don't get me wrong, I don't think there's anything good about ice at all. It's more mental, but heroin was a physical drug where you felt like you had insects crawling inside your body, and the pains and the vomiting and the diarrhea and the leg cramps, and like it's such a physical addiction, and you could fix it in 1 second.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was the
1
whole thing.
second. Yeah.
1 second. The minute I put it away, all bets are
No,
off.
you're normal. You're back to normal.
And
Well,
then,
normal.
yeah, that's what I'm laughing. That's what we used to call it.
Yeah.
I'm back to normal. Fuck, I just
Yeah.
got to feel normal.
Yeah.
Normal's
I know,
not
it's
being
crazy.
disconnected,
Yeah.
you know? Because when I think about me and active addiction, I'm so disconnected from family. I don't want to see family. I don't want anyone to see me when I'm using. I usually have a girlfriend as a hostage. She's using with me.
Yeah.
When I go to the Nick, she comes out and visits me, and because she loves me, she brings me a bit of gear in. So she's taking the odds of getting pinched to come and visit me. And if she visits me without gear, I don't want to visit.
Yeah.
What the fuck you doing here visiting me? You just fucking visit. See someone else with some gear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, people just don't understand that this disease of addiction, and it is a fucking disease. And when I say disease, it's just because I felt so uncomfortable, so not at ease with myself, at ease. So I call it a disease, you know, and I don't like labels. All I know is that once I use drugs, I can't guarantee my behaviour, and that I'll go to any lengths to get stoned. That wasn't a moral issue until I got morals.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't a moral issue. To me, it was like, And, and I don't mean to be awful, but if mum had to give you a snort, someone else was going to give you a snort eventually because you were destined to become an addict. I believe that in my heart.
100%. You're totally right, because that life was what I was living now. Heroin was now in the family home.
Yeah.
A heroin addict was with my mother. I think it's important to add as well, when I was in jail, I just I'd had my 21st birthday in there. I got a call one day in the yard. The screw said, "Oh, you got a call." And that just didn't happen. This had to be bad news. So my head immediately went to, "Oh, something's happened to one of my brothers," or something like that, because my sister was in jail at that time with me. Yeah, I was told that my brother had found my mother dead from a heroin overdose. So that was the first death that I'd had from heroin addiction from somebody that I knew. Yeah, so that was a huge, like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But even the death of my mother from this drug wasn't enough to stop me from getting out and using again.
Yeah.
I'll just fast forward a little bit while we're touching on, deaths. My older brother was also a heroin addict. His life was a revolving door of prison, getting out, using, committing all these crimes, going back to jail. That was his life, had been since he was 18. Now, when he got out about 3 years ago now, he got out, OD'd and died that night.
Yeah.
I was next of kin, so I was told the next day. About 2 years ago, I got a phone call because, again, I was next of kin to my sister. Your sister's dead from an overdose. Now, far out. 3 family members dead from drugs.
Yeah.
Far out, man. Like, devastating. And that just makes me more grateful and thankful that I did get that light bulb moment.
Yeah.
They didn't, and it's so sad that they didn't. They were living a tortured life. They were tortured souls. It makes me want to cry even just talking about it. Yeah, my brother and I were the lucky ones. We managed to get out of the life and turn our lives around, thankfully. It just kills me that my other siblings just didn't have that clarity. It's a shame. It's a waste.
I've got a brother who died while I was in prison last time. He died in about 2010. I got out in 2012, and I got a message. He was on the ice, and one of his dickhead mates gave him 120 mil of methadone to help him even himself out, and he just drank it because he wasn't an opiate person. He drank 120 mil and died. And then my older sister, he died from the oxycodines and the piss, after I'd been out of jail about 2 years, so I lost my brother and my sister to this disease by that time I was 27 years clean. I was 27 years clean by the time I lost my sister. I went and seen her, and she was just an alcoholic and taking pills with her kids. She was hitting up doctors, and her and her son were sharing the oxys. It's just this disease. People just underestimate the power of this disease, and they think it's a moral issue. It's got nothing to do with morals.
Yeah.
It's got to do with a fucking mental health problem.
Yeah.
My mental health can depend upon my treatment. What I call treatment is just carrying the message of recovery and helping other people. That's all I'm all about, helping people.
Another thing, that hits hard with me as well, like when I was in jail in Thailand, my embassy came to visit me one afternoon to tell me that my father was dead. He died of a heart attack. Now, I mention this because me being a heroin addict, committing these crimes, going to jail, having people die on you, I couldn't go to the funeral. I couldn't, there's just so much add-on stuff to a person being in jail. These are consequences to you being in jail. How horrible that you can't go and bury your dad.
Yep.
How horrible you got to go to your mother's funeral in handcuffs, cuffed to a screw. Fuck.
Yeah.
And like you said, this is what I'm about now. I just want to spread the message of hope, and I want to motivate people to look. I guess I'll mention what happened when I got back to an Australian jail. One of the main reasons I was happy to be back in Australia was in Thailand, foreigners weren't allowed to study. There was a school built in the prison for Thai people who could study, but we weren't allowed to. So for all us foreigners, we were so pissed off about this because all of us were doing huge sentences. So we're sitting here wasting away, not learning anything, not being able to better ourselves for our future. It was such a waste. So once I was back at home, I knew what I wanted to do with my life. I knew I wanted to work with people who had heroin addictions. Oh, not just heroin addiction, any addiction, who knew about family violence, mental health. I've grown up with all these things, and I've suffered mental health myself. So I studied community services. I got a diploma in youth work. When I got out of jail, I did a lot of study. I'm a certified hypnotherapist now as well. I've done a lot to educate myself to be able to do what I want to do with my life. So yeah, I was fortunate enough to get back and be able to take advantage of the prison system. And, you know, it's so easy to just be in jail and just sit around talking shit with your mates every day. But what's that getting you? It's getting you nowhere. You know, you're sitting around telling all your war stories. Like, who gives a shit? You know, who cares?
Yeah.
You hear these stories 1,000 times. So I wasn't interested in that. I was interested in the study element. So yeah, and that's what I want to tell people. Don't waste your time doing nothing in jail. Use the prison to your advantage. It's free. You don't pay for anything. It's all free. Whatever you want to study, it's handed to you on a silver platter. That's what I'm about now. I'm a motivational speaker, and, you know, the talks I've done already, you know, I look into people's faces and I just see the light just come into their face, the light in their eyes. And, you know, afterwards they're like, oh my God, thank you so much for coming. I know I've got hope now. And I say, well, you have. I used to be you. I was you. Look at me now. I said, you can be me. You know, you just need the tools. You need to know how to do it, you know. And I was lucky that I had a lot of support in my life when I got out. And I know a lot of people don't have that. So, you know, that people have to know where they can go for that support, for that help. I mean, back in my day, there wasn't much support at all. But now there's so much support out there. I actually couldn't believe what's available now to people. There's so much. So really, people really don't have an excuse to say, well, there was no help. It's everywhere now.
Yeah, it is everywhere, and it's true. How long have you been out, Hole?
I got out in December 2012. So I've been out 12 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I got out in March 2012.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there you go. Very similar.
The 30th of March. I've only got two tattoos on me. The last time I had a drink or a drug was the 3rd of the 3rd, 86.
Yeah.
And the 30th of March 2012 is when I got out of prison.
Yeah, awesome.
22 dates I have on me.
Yeah.
So you've done a lot in 12 years.
Yeah, look, it's been a hard slog, and I'll touch now a bit on mental health. When I got out of jail, I actually thought it would be hard for me to reintegrate into society. But I actually walked out and walked back into life like I'd never been away from it. I was very lucky. So, you know, I was on parole, still having to do piss tests all the time. It's a funny thing. My parole officer actually told me at one of these appointments that I went to, he'd actually dealt with some of my family members. And he matter-of-factly said, you won't be out for long. I was like, what? He said, you won't last long. And I said, why would you say something like that to me? And he said, well, I've dealt with your other family members and they never were. And I said, yeah, well, you know, don't label everybody the same. I said, I think that's really disgusting that you said that to me. And that was the end of that. From that moment, we just didn't gel. Anyway, finished my parole, 5 years. all clean piss tests. And, you know, the last day I was like, well, how wrong were you? And he said, yeah, I was. And I'm sorry.
Because you came back as a federal prisoner, you only had to do 5 years parole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Same.
yeah. So, you know, that was my introduction to being a released prisoner, you know, having a chat with your parole officer. Yeah, lovely chat. So, yeah, you know, I got on with life. And about 2 years after I'd been out, I started waking up in the morning, crying my eyes out. I'd be driving down the street and just start crying. I thought I was going insane. I didn't know what was going on. After this happening for a few weeks, like, I didn't want to go out of my house. I didn't want to talk to people. I was just wanted to shut off from everything. Yeah, after a few weeks of this, I thought, I can't continue doing this. I've got to go and see a doctor. So I went to my family doctor who'd known me my whole life, and he laughed and he said, Holly, you've got depression for one, and he said, you've got post-traumatic stress. And as soon as he said those words to me, it made sense. But I had never even thought about those types of things. It never entered my mind. Yeah, so from that, a doctor appointment, he put me on antidepressants, which didn't agree with me. He then put me on another one. Fine. I started doing a lot of counselling, like a lot of intense counselling. After being on these antidepressants for a few years, I went to another doctor that I was seeing and I said, I'm all right now. I want to come off these pills. And he said, I don't recommend you do that. And I says, well, I'm going to do it. I said, so you let me know how I can safely come off these. And he said, okay, I don't recommend it, but okay, you want to do it. I came off this medication and I thought I was doing fine. My husband said to me one day, I think you better go back and see the doctor. You're a real bitch. And I was like, what? And he said, mate, he said, since you've come off that medication, he said, you're not right. I couldn't see it, but everyone in my circle could. And I trust these people, like they're my family. And I realised then, okay, I went back to my doctor and he said, I knew you'd be back. He said, I knew it. And he says, but you had to do it. You had to try. And I said, yeah, I'm glad I did, because I now know and understand that I have to be on this medication. And I'm fine with that. I don't care. It's helping me. I'll be on this to the... Yeah.
I believe it's a chemical imbalance, and it's balancing your chemical imbalance.
Mate, and I'm fine with that. I'll be on this till the day I die, and I don't care. It's working for me.
People to score, and you're not fucking causing harm, and, you know, come on. Yeah.
100%. You know, so I also understand that side of things too. Like, you know, mental illness, man, it's tough. It's hard.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what I have found myself when I've been talking to people, I found there's a large stigma for men around wanting to talk about their stuff with people. And hey, don't get me wrong, it's women as well. But I find it more with men. They look at it like it's a sign of weakness, you know, and that's sad as well, because it's so not. And so many more people could be getting help if they just talk to somebody, you know? Yeah.
I could talk to you for hours, Donald. I really could.
Look, me too.
I really appreciate you coming on. We may even do another one further on down the track, and we'll delve more into how you stay clean now, what you're doing. What's your purpose now these days? What is your purpose?
Okay, so my purpose these days, like I said, you know, I'm a motivational speaker. I do counselling. I do talks. Because I have just started, like when my book came out in February, everything has been such a whirlwind for me for the last few months. I've been travelling over East, you know, doing publicity for my book, doing a lot of TV, radio, podcasts. I've only just in the last 3 or 4 weeks had a bit of downtime. So that's been the time I've really been trying to organise my life and the way that I'm going. I'm actually waiting at the moment to get clearance to see if I can start going into prisons. you know, I think it's really important for someone like me to be able to go in and talk to people about my story, because I know my story resonates with so many people. I think it's
Yeah,
important
100%.
for me to be able to go into rehabs and talk to people. You know, look,
Yep.
I'd love to be going anywhere and talking to anybody, because my
Yeah.
story isn't just about addiction or mental health. My story and the things I talk about can relate to anybody in everyday life. You don't have to just be an addict to get
Yep.
where I'm coming from.
Yeah,
A lot
100%.
of my stuff is about mindset as well. Positive mindset, positivity. There's a lot to it,
Yeah.
as you
Yep.
would know.
What's your book called, Donald? Show us your book,
So it's
please.
Holy as Hell.
Holy as hell.
It's on a lot of platforms, but I tell most people, if you can get it on Amazon, do it on there because it's free shipping.
Yep.
It's also available as an audio book on a lot of platforms also. Yeah, check it out.
I will get that today. I'll order that today. And Holly, look, thank you very much for coming on The Truth About Addiction. Stay tuned for the next exciting episode, and we'll get into it then, and we'll talk more about what's going on today and how you're going with your books. Thanks,
Yeah, thanks
Holly.
for having me on. It's been great to meet you.
I solemnly swear that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.